Hi, I'm Robert Perry, and I'm here with my new friend, Brandon Watson.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
Oh, good to meet you. First time we shook hands. We're meeting. It's official now. So, you were telling me you had some things you wanted to express about, was it racial equality?
Yes. I've seen, a lot of things in the news related to George Floyd, related to, there was a man a couple months ago in, I believe, maybe it was one of the Carolinas.
Okay.
He was jogging in his neighborhood or something. And,
Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And
Ahmaud Arbery, in case, well, the mic's pointed that way. They probably got, good job, Kyle. Thank you. Our controlling room is telling us it's Ahmaud. Sorry.
No, but I saw that case about a couple months ago, and just things like that have really got me thinking recently about how I grew up. I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Jackson, Michigan, where most of my childhood happened, from the ages of about 3 to 9 and a half, and so that's where I saw a lot of drugs and policing, and I saw different issues with gangs and drug dealing and stuff too, even within my own home. And
sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm working through that, but and then so I moved from that where there was a lot of people working together. There were people working together, whatever way they were working together, whatever cause they were working for, they were still working towards something together, and it was a predominantly African American community. And then I moved to Kentucky, and I come into foster care, and I moved to Paducah, and that's also I had a lot more African American friends there. And I grew up, I didn't see, we learned about Black History Month, we learned about slavery, it was bad, a lot of typical you hear about white guilt and oh, it was horrible, which it was. I'm not taking that for granted. It was absolutely awful what we did in the 1800s
Right.
to Africans. But I think that I didn't really see any racism until I moved to where I'm at now here in Marshall County.
I see.
And it was kind of a weird shift for me, because I grew up around a lot of Black people. I grew up listening to rap music, and you have kids here who are they listen to rap music, but then they're also saying things that are it's horribly destructive to the African American community. And you have to kind of stand yourself away, because it's you stand up for them, that you stand up and you say, hey, that's not right, you shouldn't say that. But then it's they kind of come back and they're like, oh, shut up. And it's you kind of get bullied for it a little bit.
Okay. So the person who's being racist toward the African American, if you stand up against them, they start bullying you.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I had the story right.
Yeah, and that's how it goes with a lot of bullying scenarios.
Well, sure.
But I think it's it's different when race is involved, or socioeconomic status is involved. When those things come into play, I think it's a little bit different, because those things are a little bit close to home. Those things aren't necessarily things that you as a child can change within, or even as an adult, you can't change those things very well. You can't just 10 years old up and get a job, or you can't just you can't just alter your biological your body. You can't just alter that genetically and your genetics and such.
So the thing with George Floyd, now you've never lived in Minnesota, you don't know Minneapolis, because
No.
that's where that happened. So I respect that you might not know this, but just guess. Do you think that would be more likely to happen here or in Michigan, where you grew up, the George Floyd?
In Michigan, where I grew up, I think.
Well, you didn't think about that very much. You just boom. Why do you think that's true?
Because in an area like this, it's there aren't many African Americans here, so that's not a thing you think about. And but and it just, and the cops here, they're all pretty nice people. They're not the very outgoing, they're not like the racist type, but in a place like Michigan, where I grew up, there's a lot of, violent crimes and stuff. Like the crime rates there, like I've done the statistics, I've seen the statistics and like the research, like the crime rate there, the violent crime rate there is pretty high. And so in a place like that, you would have, cops who have, seen more things and been in more cases where they've had, they might have been in a case where they needed to do something like that. Not that that's ever like needs to be done,
Right.
but they get scared and they overreact or something.
Right. So where do you think that crime comes from? Where do you think that violent crime comes from?
I think it's I think it relates to, there's talks of white privilege. And I don't think that white privilege is some new thing that is prevalent, that is it's happening at this moment, that white people are being put above all the time consistently. I think it's more of a thing of residual.
Yeah, but you're losing me. How does white privilege create violent crime?
Oh, because of when you break it down and you look at it, you have communities, the projects and such, that are predominantly African American. And those are where you have a lot more of your violent crimes, your drug crimes, and things of that nature.
So it's not that being privileged causes crime, it's being that underprivileged.
That underprivileged. Yes, not the white
crime.
privilege. And I'm sorry, I was trying to bridge a gap there.
No. That's cool.
But yeah,
I get lost sometimes. I just clarified.
I do too.
But I don't think of poor people as unethical people. I don't think poor people are innately criminals.
I don't think that either. Because I grew up like that. So I don't think that, but I think he's
a violent criminal. I'm gonna.
but no, to a certain extent, other people see that. They see somebody. We stereotype. We all stereotype somewhat.
Right. But somebody stereotyping someone because they're poor doesn't cause violent crime. What causes the violent crime?
A hatred, or violence, or how the person was brought up. Typically, I believe
culture.
Yes,
they're brought up in a violent culture.
Yes.
Okay.
You have somebody who was abused growing up.
Mm-hmm.
They're more likely to be abusive because that's how they were shown love as a kid. And that's what they thought love was.
So
similar concept.
This might be a sensitive subject, but what about drugs? Do you think drugs plays a big role in the violent culture?
I think it does. So when I was younger, like I said, I saw a lot of drug crime in my neighborhood. And one instance was I was laying awake at night and I didn't have any blinds on my window. I could see straight through to the hilltop from where my window was. And I saw a drug deal happen, but then I don't know the full scenario, but it would assume it looked like somebody didn't have the money, so they shot the other guy and just ran off.
Right.
And, I saw this at the age of 8, and, looking back on it, it makes you think.
It's formative, too.
Yeah, and it makes you think. So I believe that, it's a whole business in itself.
It's a violent business.
It's a very violent business because it's a lot of rivalries, and there are certain things, and they have some code of ethics to it too. It doesn't seem like it, but there are some things that you can and can't do when you're doing stuff like this.
Okay,
having seen it and actually seen a couple of drug deals, and things like that from my mom or my stepdad. It was very scary experiences because it's you're kind of always looking around, and
right.
There's a lot of snooping around involved.
No, just because I happen to know your foster parents, to be perfectly clear, you're talking about your biological
parents.
Mom
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Not
yes.
the foster parents.
Yes, this is when I lived in Michigan. No, this was a long time ago.
But so I mean, you know what a black market is. You're a pretty.
Yes.
I haven't known you long, but you're a pretty smart lad. Would you think I would be overstepping if I were to blame the violence from the nature of the black market? In other words, the drug deals are happening on a black market. I mean, don't you basically get the same thing around prostitution? I mean, you think of pimps as violent? You think of drug dealers as violent?
Yeah, I would say that, I don't believe that there's a crime unless there's a victim.
Okay.
And in a lot of drug crime instances, there is no victim. It's somebody, they've been caught with drugs. They have drugs in their car. I mean, and yes, how did they get them? And that's another thing that you have to prove in court, though.
Right.
I think. But
so if for some of these drugs, if you could get the drugs from a dispensary legally, as opposed to buying it on a street corner in a drug deal,
underhanded, and you never know what they could put in it. But if it's pushed through a dispensary, that you would have some hope that there's not things laced in and absolutely killing and
safer.
That could kill, and it would be safer because there's regulations on it, and you would hope that would be better for people. Not that drugs are good. That's not the message I'm trying to put out there.
No.
Drugs are not good in any way, and I can absolutely say that from firsthand experience. Drugs are no way to go. That's not a way to make money, but I think that it's not a good way to make money, but in some cases that's the only way they have.
Right.
Because of their past and what they were taught growing up, because of broken families, and mom or dad has to do whatever they can to provide for the family, and they resort to drugs because drugs are abundant.
So stop me if I misconnect things. So underprivileged neighborhood, there's a lot of attraction for dealing in black markets for making money, such as drugs or prostitution.
Yeah.
Those make for violent crimes.
It allows it allows for there to be it's more, I can't think of words, but it's more possible. The probability is higher that
It's more prevalent.
More prevalent in those areas.
Okay. And I'm thinking if there's going to be an area with more violent crime, I'm imagining the police end up being more aggressive, they end up being more militarized, and a little less like the friendly police that you see here in Marshall County.
Yeah, and those areas are typically over-policed as well because of that reason.
I think that's all the wisdom we're going to find today. Do you have anything else for us?
Not really.
Man. So we're trying to send me to Washington. I'm Robert Perry. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives for District 2, Kentucky. And I hope you send me there. And when I don't want to stay real long, and I'm hoping this gentleman gets a few years on him and comes and replaces me, because I think this is some serious wisdom. Me, I want to get back to writing code before too long. Check out my website, perry4ky.com. You can volunteer to help me out. You can donate money. Also, I have a candidates page. We have a lot of libertarians running in Kentucky this year, including Brad Barron, who's running against Mitch McConnell, just in case you should want to ditch Mitch. And also, I can't forget Joe Jorgensen is our presidential candidate, and Spike Cohen for VP. It's joj2020.com. Go watch some videos with Joe. I really do think as you get to know Joe, you'll be very impressed. She might even be nearly as wise as this little dude. So good to meet you, sir. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other, yes.